Hi everyone, welcome to Good Knits by SK. I'm Sherry and this is going to be podcast number 7. I have a lot to update on today. I got back from Canada about a week ago after a very nice 10 days spent with family and friends. So I went to Edmonton to visit my mom and mother-in-law, as well as my stepdad. And then I spent 4 days in Jasper, which was beautiful, spending time in the mountains with my dad and family there, and also meeting my nephew for the first time. I was able to give him the Storm Sweater Junior that I'd made, and everybody was super blown away by just how nice that sweater turned out, and thankfully it fit him. Still a little bit big, so he has lots of room to grow into it, but he actually wore it for his Santa photos. So it's nice. It really felt like that was worth the effort and something special that I could give him to remember his auntie by. After Jasper, I ended up going to Vegas with my mom for 3 days and we had the best time. We went and saw Garth Brooks at the new residency that he has there at Caesar's Palace, and it was incredible. It was a 500-person venue, and he had the band and yeah, played literally like every hit song that he has. So we had a great time. We also went and saw the Beatle Love Cirque du Soleil show, which my mom and I have always really loved Cirque du Soleil throughout the years. So I think that might actually be my favorite one that I've ever seen, because I love the combination of just like really recognizable, amazing music with performance. So I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one that I would go see again, and I highly recommend if you're in Vegas to go see that. So it was a bit of a whirlwind doing Jasper and then having 1 day at home, doing Vegas for 3 days, and then literally flying home the day after I got back from Vegas. I've been really feeling the jet lag this week, but it was worth it because it was just really nice to see family. It had been more than a year since I'd seen anybody, and more than 3 years since I'd seen my brother and sister-in-law, and a lot had changed in their lives in that time. So it was nice to get that quality time. For today, clearly I'm fighting the light and the weather in Amsterdam isn't great. It's cloudy and gray, so apologies if this quality of video isn't the best. Not much I can do about it, and I haven't had a lot of other time to film, and I just want to get this up because I'm back in Paris next week for work, so I'm not going to have a lot of time to film. And I have lots to share. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say is I saw my friend who I'd gifted the Sophie shawl and Emile beanie for her 10-year-old, well, my 10-year-old niece, and they absolutely love them. So I also got the pom-pom. I'll insert a very poor photo of me wearing that because the lighting was bad. But yeah, I think both those gifts turned out perfect, and it was just nice to do some gift knits for people. And I have a few to also talk about that I hadn't planned for that I will share this episode. Also for my trip, I brought 5 projects worth of yarn, which was maybe too much, plus a current whip, which was my Cami No9. And I ended up working on only my Cami No9, and then I did a last minute pack for a gift knit for my sister-in-law, so I cast that on, and then I ended up buying yarn for my other project. No, 2 other projects. So I ended up with 7 projects worth of yarn on that trip, packed a bunch of stuff I didn't end up using, but you never know what you're gonna wanna work on, and I had a lot of time in airports and driving, and in the end realized all I wanted to work on was stockinette projects, which is all I did, other than my last minute cast on the way home. Also, I ended up getting a new mug on my trip, which is Alberta themed. So I have the Canada version, which you saw in my last video, and I don't know, really attached sentimental feelings to that mug since we moved here, even though it's just a Starbucks mug. but I really wanted to get either another Canada mug or something else, and they recently added the Alberta version and also an Edmonton version. So I bought the Alberta one because it just reminds me of being from Edmonton, Calgary, and Jasper, and I thought it really encompassed everything nicely. So I was very happy to get that, and it's the perfect size for tea in the winter on these very chilly days. Where to actually start today? So I have a lot of acquisition type stuff to talk about, and this episode is gonna kind of go all over the place because some of my acquisitions were related to my finished projects and my whips. So let's just keep this one organic and see where we get to today. My first finished object I don't have anymore because it ended up being a cast on for my sister-in-law, and that was an Oslo hat, so the Mohair edition. And I ended up bringing the leftover yarn of my Olivia and Oliver fiber Luau fingering classic sock yarn because I had about 108 grams of this left. I've already made my cumulus blouse and a pair of socks with this yarn, and I was really trying to find another purpose for this. So I decided this would be great for her. It's beautiful yarn. I love the colorway. All these colored speckles are very nice. And so I cast that on and paired it with the Tilia Latte Mohair, Filcolana Tilia Mohair. And also the Tynn silk mohair, I forget what colorway, also a very similar brown. I actually started with that and then ended up running out of yarn, so I had to switch to this for the top portion of the hat, and literally you couldn't notice a difference, so they're very similar in color. So I ended up knitting this in 3 days. I cast it on at the airport as I was leaving. And it was actually kind of funny because I felt as I was working on it, I think I maybe twisted my cast on, but then everything seemed fine at the start. I kept checking. And then when I got on the plane before takeoff, I looked closer and realized it indeed was twisted, and I'd already worked about 1/4 of the brim. So then I had to rip it all out and start over. So I had lost a couple hours of work on that. So I lost a couple hours of work on that, and I had to start over. But yeah, I ended up finishing it anyway in 3 days. I did most of it on the drive to Jasper because my dad picked me up and did the heavy lifting on that, did all the driving. So I had 4 hours to finish the hat and finished it just as we were pulling into Jasper. And I love the way it turned out, so much so that I think I will actually knit myself one because I now have still 49 grams of this left, which this looks like a very small ball, but I'm thinking I might have enough to actually complete the small size of the Oslo hat. So I think also because I have this Tilia left, I'm gonna see how far I can get making myself a hat. So it won't look as baggy as the one that I already made, but I really like the color of it, especially paired with the darker mohair. The other finished object that I have, I also don't have anymore because it ended up being another Oslo hat, this time the non-mohair version, and it was a last minute cast on because my best friend and I decided to do a bit of a trade. So she bought me a Lululemon fanny pack because we had a inside joke about it this summer, and I asked her to send me one so that I could use it in Vegas, which ended up being very handy. I absolutely loved it. I'm very glad she sent it to me. But I felt bad that I didn't have her Oslo hat that I'd promised her done because I couldn't find the right yarn for it. She wanted a very specific color, which was neon yellow, and I needed to find it in fingering and potentially mohair. And I was just having a tough time finding anything outside of hedgehog fibers that I thought was good enough quality. And that hat would have ended up being, I think, 60 euros in yarn, which I wasn't really prepared to spend. So while I was in Canada, and I'll get more into this yarn store later, but I ended up going to this amazing yarn store called Junkie, which is in Sherwood Park. It's probably one of my favorite yarn shops I've ever been to. And I walked in and happened to find this Cascade Heritage. Yeah, there. Which I think is 70% merino and 20 or 30% polyamide, I believe, or nylon. And it feels really, really nice. So I bought 2 skeins of this. It was, I think, around 11 euros each once I converted, which was significantly cheaper than the original yarn I was gonna buy. And I had them cake it up for me so that I could cast it on right away. So I ended up casting this hat on while I was in Jasper, and I technically finished it in 3 days, but very similar to the first Oslo hat I made, I ended up making a pretty massive mistake. This time I did very much double check that I didn't twist my joining in the round, which I didn't, but as I was working on it, I'm like, this gauge feels a little bit loose because you're supposed to work on a 3.5 millimeter needle as opposed to the 3 millimeter of the Mohair edition. And I started it late at night the first day I was there and got, I think, halfway through the brim this time to realize I was working on 3.75 millimeter needles. So as I was working, it just felt like it kept expanding and flowing outwards, and it just became more and more evident that something was wrong. Sorry, there's a little bug. So yeah, I had to rip that one out, lost half a day's of work, started over again, and then ended up finishing it by the time I left. I actually finished it before the drive home. So it turned out really well. I shipped it off to her. She got it the other day and sent me a picture wearing it, and she loves it. So that worked out really well. And I actually kind of like the neon yellow. I thought she was a little bit crazy for wanting that, but I do have about, I think 92 grams left of it. So maybe I could make a hat, maybe not per se an Oslo hat, but potentially something else for myself. So I'm gonna hang on to this, see what I wanna do with it. I'm not dying to cast it on at the moment, but yeah, let's see how it goes. I'm just very happy that both gift knits ended up being well received and hopefully become staples in both people's wardrobes. And in both cases, I made pieces that I kind of wish I had made for myself. So more cast-ons for me. Those were my only 2 finished objects. Then I also have a few whips to talk about. So it's actually not even so much a whip because I showed my Salty Day sweater to you guys last time. But I was just finishing off the bottom ribbing, the twisted rib, and I was ready to kind of move on to the sleeves. But before I left for vacation, I was just really not feeling right about the fit of the body. It felt really tight, and I was worried that if I continued on without blocking it, I would end up with a sweater that was way too small by the time I got the sleeves and neckline done, and I would just never wear it and have to frog the whole thing. So I made the decision to do a full wet block before I left and then see how I felt when I got back. So I will say I was able to block this to the correct dimensions. I did have to stretch it quite a bit, which leaves me to believe maybe I should have gone up half a needle size, which I had originally planned to do, and then after swatching again decided not to. But I think that would have made it a little bit looser. So I really had to fight to get this block to, especially the width dimension, not so much the length. But also the yarn did soften up significantly in this case, which is also another worry I had said on my last episode. So I am happier with the yarn quality. I'll try to insert some B-roll of me wearing the sweater now after being blocked. I think I'm gonna carry on. I do think it's loose enough. There's some weird issues with stretch lines on the body, but I think if I wet block it again, I'll be able to get rid of those. So I think this weekend I'm gonna start the sleeves and then hopefully have this done this month, because I'd really like to just finish this project to move on to something else. But I'm at least pleasantly surprised that, you know, the yarn feels way less rustic now, and the fit at least is closer to what I was expecting, because yeah, before blocking, this was just skin tight on me, and I really thought I was gonna have to rip out the whole thing. So I'll insert the B-roll, and then maybe you guys can tell me as well if you think it still looks too small or if it's worthwhile to continue. Maybe I just want so badly for this to fit that I am talking myself into keeping it. So also, I've mentioned this sweater, I think every podcast I've had lately, but it is a pattern by Veronica Lindberg or Kudo Vakika, and the yarn is Durarum Natura Gilead. So I'll just reiterate that. Then the second work in progress I have is the Camisole number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I've made quite a lot of progress on this. So last episode, I think I just done the front piece. I finished off the back panel on my trip to Jasper, joined in the round, and then just have used it as my mindless stockinette stitch after all those Oslo hats, and managed to make quite a lot of progress on the various plane and car rides. So I think this is on 3.25 millimeter needles in the Knitting for Olive Bottle Green Merino. And it's going very slowly. So I keep feeling like I've made a lot of progress, and then I look down and I'm like, oh, there's still so much left. So I haven't measured this week, but I think I still have about half the body to go. And then in order to actually do the bottom folded hem and the arm and neckline, I actually need to get the smaller cords for my 2.5 millimeter needles. So I bought the needle size a few months ago before I started this, and then realized the cords I have don't actually work with it for the Chow Goose. You need to buy the smaller set. So I'm gonna order that, so when I get to the bottom, I can just go ahead and get started on that. And I've heard from other people that doing the trim on this one is quite a painful process on small needles, and just in order to get that really finished look that she has in her design, yeah, you, I think, have to work quite hard for it. So I'll report back once I get to that. I'm not looking forward to it, but I am really, really loving the color of this one. It's probably my favorite green I've worked with, and maybe one that I'll buy for some other pieces as well. So excited to wear this, especially with blazers and that this winter. So yeah. And then the third whip is, I decided last minute, I saw while I was in Canada that Sari Nordland had announced a secret MKAL where she was going to post weekly the next part of a shawl pattern. And I just really like the idea of that. It's kind of a Christmas cast on. Sorry, drop my cable needle. I really like the idea of just doing an MKAL and kind of sharing that experience with people. And it was a good excuse for me to go back to the yarn store before I got on my flight. So I just finished yesterday the first part, there we go, of the pattern. So I will say I am not loving the process of knitting this one. It's very fiddly. There's lots of cables and not like a memorizable cable because every row is different. And then there's also bobbles, which I will say I've enjoyed the process of knitting a bobble. It's my first time. That's actually quite fun, but I don't like any part of the cables on this. And there's all kinds of cables. So there's a zigzagging pattern and then also this edge here, which I got the second part of the pattern this week and realized it just only gets worse from here. So I think the only thing really keeping me going on this one is I am in love with the yarn that I picked. So I ended up going with the Gerpard Wild and Soft. So I had bought this in the coffee cream color for a different project, and they ended up having it at Statement Junkie in a bunch of bright colors. So I decided to buy it in this Eggplant. And then the only color they had to pair it with there for Mohair was this Knitting for Olive Bordeaux. So they go quite well together. They're creating kind of this berry, eggplanty color. And I am really happy with how this pattern is looking. I just am not really enjoying it. And then on top of that, so this is literally just like an episode of talking about all my knitting failures and mistakes because I've had so many of them on every project that I have started lately. So on this one, I got about halfway through the first part of the pattern here. So I think row 40 something. I was like, this is not looking right. Like I'm not seeing the cable in here. I'm not really seeing this column line that's supposed to be in the pattern, and realized it was because I was reading again the pattern wrong on the wrong side. So if you watched my episode on the storm sweater, I did the exact same thing there. On the back panel, I messed up one of the charts because I was reading it from right to left instead of left to right. And you think because I just made that mistake, I would have learned from it. I obviously did not. So I did the exact same thing, got quite far, and was like, okay, well, there's no point in continuing if this pattern doesn't look right. So I ripped it out. Seriously debated if I should start it again or just use this yarn for a hat, but I felt committed. I don't know why. So I restarted it. Took me about 2 evenings to catch back up, and now I'm done the first part of the clue. So I'm going to continue, and I hope now I've learned this lesson enough that I just won't make that mistake again. But who knows? Clearly, I'm just not good at reading charts, and it's something that I need to suffer through multiple times to learn my lesson. I also realized I never actually said what I was wearing this episode. So this is actually my Louvre sweater that I made last year as also part of a knit along. So I knit this. This is a PetiteKnit pattern, of course, and I knit it in Pure Gint Deep Petroleum. And I will say, I think this is probably my favorite sweater that I've ever knit. I absolutely love the color of it. I love the fit. I know the high neck bothers some people, especially in this specific yarn. I personally find it really cozy, and I just find like the length of it, the fit of it, everything is perfect. This is for sure a pattern I would make again, and I really enjoyed the process of it. So yeah, Louvre sweater. I'm really losing light, and I think I need to get to the important part, which is the acquisitions, and they need light. Okay, so I'm gonna go through my trip to Statement Junkie, which is the yarn store in Sherwood Park first, because I made 2 trips there. And the first trip I actually made because I saw on their website that they had the Noro Madeira sake yarn, which I'd mentioned a few episodes ago, I think in podcast 5, that I had been really inspired by High Fiber Knits version of the, I think, Away cardigan, and then String Things by Mel had made a version of the champagne cardigan in that yarn, and I really, really wanted it and was having a very tough time finding the yarn in Europe. So I was excited. They had 10 balls. I think I needed 6, and I was going there on a mission to buy that, even though it was going to be a very expensive purchase. And then I got there, found the yarn, looked at it, felt it, and decided it just really wasn't for me. I think it's like a little bit too speckled and bright and a little bit too rustic. And I was holding it and debating and talking to my mom, and both of us were really on the fence. And she's like, I don't know if you're gonna really like this or wear it. And when it was, I think it's $30 a ball or a skein, Canadian. It's not cheap. It was gonna be around $180 to get a cardigan's worth of yarn. So if I was gonna spend that, I really wanted to be in love with it. So I originally was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy the neon yellow yarn for my friend's hat and maybe some accessories and call it a day. But then, so this store has, I mean, so many good brands. I went there last year when I visited, and I would say they've like doubled their stock and their number of brands that they carry in the last year and a half. And now they have like Sandnes, Gerpard, Cascade, they have drops, and they also have a brand that was new to me, which is Woolfolk. Oh. And I ended up getting this, it's called, I'm gonna say it wrong probably, FÅR yarn in Aubergine. And it's a chainette Aran weight yarn. And I saw this color and couldn't get over how beautiful it was. And I just had to have it. So I didn't have any project in mind, no idea what I was gonna make with it, no idea how much I should buy. So I was talking to the girl that works there, and I was like, okay, like maybe I'll just get around 1,000 meters and then try to figure out later what I make with it. So I got 6 skeins of it and realized now I didn't really add correctly because I have only 852 yards or meters, which is not enough to make a few of the projects I had in mind. I kind of wanted a longer sweater, like I think the 1031 from Ozetta, or what was the other one? I think the chestnut sweater from PetiteKnit. But I was going through Ravelry the other day, and I do have enough to make the Gallant sweater by Kadri, which has also been on my list. I was planning to make it in Mohair, but I think this chainette, because it's so light and airy, would actually work really well for that. And I really wanted a higher neck aubergine colored sweater. So I think that's what I'm gonna use this for. And I really wanna get it cast on soon, but I think I need to finish one of my other tops first. So this was an amazing purchase. I didn't even realize when I bought it that you can't get this yarn in Europe. So that worked well because I was a bit worried that I bought something that I could just easily get at home. And so I looked the other day to see if I could easily get a couple more skeins of this. It's also not cheap. This was $27 Canadian. So on the pricier side of yarn that I would typically purchase, I ended up actually spending similar to what I would have on the Noro Madeira. But I think I'm gonna be a lot happier with this. So I checked to see if I could get more skeins easily. I really can't without paying a fortune for it to come from Canada or the US directly, I think US. So I'm just gonna make it work with what I bought and see where I get to. So that was my first purchase. And then also in that first trip, so in addition to buying the Cascade, I bought stitch markers. So there's this brand, what are they called? Firefly Notes. And they have all these, I'm gonna make a lot of noise here, sorry. They have all these bakery inspired, metal enamel stitch markers. And so I got a set of 8. So there's one. And then you're not seeing that. So it's a little, I think donut or bagel with something on it. But yeah, it's all these little bakery inspired. There's also little measuring spoons and that kind of thing. So really, really cute. I really wanted to get stitch markers. So that was my first trip there. And then on my second trip, I bought the Gerpard Wild and Soft and the Knitting for Olive yarn for the turtle dove shawl, which actually I don't even think I said that when I was talking about the shawl pattern. I think I said make along, but the shawl pattern I'm making is the turtle dove shawl by Sari Nordland, which is part of the make along. Sorry, I'm still not all here. So yeah, on my second trip, I bought that yarn, and then my family very sneakily ended up running to the cash register and buying me a few other things. So one is also from Firefly Notes, is a stitch marker advent calendar. So I really didn't want a yarn advent this year because I am struggling to find a use for the one that I have. And I really love this idea of 25 stitch markers. So it's normal stitch markers as well as a few progress keepers, so the little lobster claws. And they are inspired by the fairy world and celestial night sky. So they're enamel charms, custom designed, and they're specific to this advent. So there's a few in there. I also posted a video on Instagram. So you can follow along there to see all of them. But that was a lovely gift from my mom, which was super nice. And then my stepdad ended up buying me this project bag. So they have, exclusive to them, this woman only sells in Statement Junkie and Stychen Tyme designs, which I looked her up online. I can't find any information online. I don't think she makes these or promotes them anywhere outside of the shop. So it's nice because this is completely unique. And I just love the hedgehog design, but they had a ton of other ones that I could have bought. And then the other thing I got is stitch stoppers, also from my stepdad, which in a little cowboy shape, which will remind me of Alberta, definitely, and seeing Garth Brooks. So these are by Fox and Pine Stitches. And I also bought at Statement Junkie last year when I was there, the little penguin ones from the same brand. So I was very happy with those because I just love knitting accessories. So that was my visit to Statement Junkie. And then I had just a few other acquisitions come in while I was gone. Sorry, battle against the light right now. So I had mentioned last episode, I bought the Dans Puzzled 8-2 from High Holtz in this copper color. And also while I was gone, the Knitting for Olive Claret Mohair came in. So I think these are gonna go quite well together. I feel like I made a really good decision on this, and I really wanna get this swatched for my Monday sweater. Then I had bought at Stephen and Penelope about a month ago this Isager Mohair in color 68, which is a kind of olivey green. And I'm going to pair it with the PetiteKnit, Sandnes, but also PetiteKnit Sunday yarn, which is in color 9581. I think it's called Pine Green. And I want to pair these two together for a probably Oslo hat for myself because I think it'll go really well with my camel jacket. And then also part of the same purchase, I bought for a Stockholm hat. So I made my husband one last year in a mint green, which he, despite me telling him last year, you will get very sick of this color and I don't think it's a statement or like a long-lasting piece for you because of the color. He ignored me. He asked for ice green or ice blue. I made it for him. He loves the fit of the hat, but now he doesn't like the color. So he asked me to make him another one this year. He swears he's gonna stick with this color. And it's also the Sandnes Garn Sunday in Deep Petroleum, which is actually the exact same color that I am wearing, paired with the Tynn Silk Mohair in the same color, Deep Petroleum. So these will become a Stockholm hat by PetiteKnit for him. Okay, I'm exhausted. I think that is everything that I wanted to get through today. So lots of yarn acquisitions. I actually think I've purchased a little bit too much now. I'm usually pretty good about not overbuying yarn, but yeah, I haven't really stuck to that lately. So I think I have a lot of little accessories to make in the next few weeks. I have a week off at Christmas, so I think I'll make quite a lot of progress on a few things. And hopefully cast on a few new sweaters. I also still need to buy, or actually I want to swatch again for my soft loop sweater that I showed last time where I'd made the swatch with the dark brown. I wasn't happy. I want to try with just a single strand of mohair to see if I can get gauge with that, because if so, then I think I will buy a Knitting for Olive mushroom rose, probably mohair, to pair with that coffee cream wild and soft from Gerpard, so that I can cast on that sweater, because I really want to work on it, but I don't have the right yarn to pair it with right now. That's it. So if you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to me and helps my channel to grow. And I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you next time.